Get ready, get organized, and aim high. Introducing John Baier. He has a master's degree in health and kinesiology from Purdue, an incredible STEM-based university. He has experience working with athletes, and he is amazing at helping our scholars with time management as a professionally trained executive functioning coach. Join me right now as we talk to John Baier about how he helps his scholars prepare, apply, and achieve. All right, John, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm excited about speaking with you. And I know there's a lot of families that are really looking forward to learning all about your expertise and what you can really bring to the table. So a lot of families may be watching this right now. Maybe they've seen you present one of the webinars or they're interested in working with you. But can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe where did you go to college? Do you have any passion projects, hobbies, anything like that?
Yeah, happy to. So a little bit about me. I am, in my free time, I'm actually a personal trainer. I'm very much involved in the exercise world and athletics and things like that. And so I've been doing that for about 5 years. I graduated from Purdue University with a master's in health and kinesiology. I studied psychology in my undergraduate studies. And from that time, once I got here in Austin, which was only 2 years ago, I've been working with the scholars through their college application process. And so one of the things that I will say to answer the last part of the question, hobbies and passion projects. So one thing that's very important and dear to my heart is while I was an undergraduate, I actually started a food pantry on Purdue's campus. And I am still involved with them as an alumni advisor. So if you ever see me on Facebook, I'm likely sharing something from that food pantry. So that's one of my greatest passions, like for sure.
That's actually really, really cool. Tell me a little bit about that. Why did you start the food pantry? Why was that something that you were so interested in doing?
Well, here's what happened. So I'm a member of Sigma Pi fraternity. And so as part of that experience, I think I was a sophomore when this whole thing started. We had what was essentially a yearly community service project. And so I had reached out to some administrative individuals on campus who were essentially in charge of developing student leadership. And they had told me, they said, hey, it would be really cool if we started a food pantry. And I was like freaked out. I just thought I was like, there's no way that we're going to be able to do this. And so I essentially took it upon myself to kind of start looking into just what food insecurity is and how it impacts students and individuals on campus. And then I started to realize that that was something that impacted so many more people just around me, just even in my daily life. And then I realized, okay, this is something that, I think would be great for the campus. And then we spent almost 2 years, no, a little less than that, year and a half, just securing funding, securing a location, all kinds of stuff. And then it launched, and it's been running for almost 6 years now, and that was that.
That's amazing. So let me ask you another question to kind of switch gears here. There's a lot of high school students out there that are really struggling these days. I mean, high school's extremely hard. A lot of folks are involved in sports, extracurricular activities. The pressure is really on to perform, and college is complicated. It's confusing. There's a lot of moving parts. I know that you're an executive functioning coach and you've got an extensive experience in that. Can you tell some of the families, first of all, what is an EF coach? How do you help your scholars with time management, organization? I mean, is there any advice you can give the folks that are watching?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to answer the first part of the question, so what does someone who works with executive functioning do? What is an executive functioning coach? The simplest way to put this is an executive functioning coach is someone at the most basic level who helps a scholar with something like organization at the basic level. That's one piece, organization. The second piece is time management. Another piece is follow through. So one of the most common things that scholars who struggle with executive functioning have trouble with is procrastination. That's like that's one of the easiest signs that you see. But then another one that often goes unnoticed is self-advocacy. So a lot of individuals who struggle with executive functioning have a really hard time reaching out to the resources that can get them the help they need. And so that's another big piece. So if there's any one thing, like just at a basic level to get started, I would say is to teach your scholar how to ask for help. That is like one of the most fundamental pieces of executive functioning that I think goes overlooked, or goes unnoticed, I should say, is the self-advocacy piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard because I mean, it can be really intimidating to ask for help. I mean, I remember whenever I was in high school and even in college, I mean, you're in there with a room full of other folks. It seems like everybody's understanding what the professor or the teacher is saying. I don't want to be the one person asking that kind of question. So when you are working with, your families and your scholars, is there an element of confidence that you're trying to instill into them so that they feel confident asking about questions? Or what is it that you do when you're asking, when they're in the water? Like, how do you help them become their own self-advocates?
Yeah. So with first thing that I think anyone needs to understand is that it's a process. This isn't anything that, you don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden this happens overnight. So if we were to start with the small, well, I call them small wins. So it takes a lot for a scholar to just raise their hand in class and ask a question, or if we were to apply it to, the college application process, to even, reach out, to their guidance counselor and make that introduction. And so to start that process, the small win is just simply teaching a scholar just how to even do that communication. So one small thing you can do is just sit with them and workshop how to write an introductory email. And that's like the first step. So many scholars have such a hard time with even writing that intro email because of one of the aspects is they're just afraid to fail. They're just afraid to do it wrong. They don't know, if it's going to come off right. And once you can get over that hurdle, like you mentioned, that confidence building aspect, it's just little by little over time is how we build this. So that's one small first step that would be taken working with someone.
Awesome. Great. To kind of go back, I mean, Purdue, a lot of families we work with, they want to get into that STEM-based school, go Boilers. Tell me a little bit about, your experience at Purdue. I mean, if somebody is watching and maybe they're interested in putting Purdue on their list, what was Purdue like, first of all?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say. I would say that, I lived with, worked with, and friends with so many engineers that went to this school. I feel like I know more about the work that they do just by association. So here's what I'll say about that program. It's very rigorous, okay? And for good reason. It is the top engineering school in Indiana. I think it's a top 10 public school in the country. And so what I would say about Purdue is that it's a very homey vibe. Like it's very much, it's not like in the middle of it's not in the middle of the city. It's essentially like one of those colleges that's slightly separated from the city. It's its own entity, right? Kind of a little bit separated from the city vibe. In terms of the academics, you really, and I mean really, have got to be on your A+ game. Test scores. I mean, engineering is the most competitive program at that school. And I say engineering just because that's the one that they market so much, but all the STEM majors at that school are highly competitive, especially for out of state. In fact, Purdue gets so many out of state applicants that it's so much harder to get in there out of state than it is in state. That's one of those things that I really tell scholars, if you're thinking about Purdue and your scores aren't in that top 25th percentile, you're really probably not going to have a chance. So that's something we really look for when thinking about that.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So college application process. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. You have resume, you have the expanded resume, you have an activity list, you have all kinds of essays, main essays, short answer questions. What is your favorite part about the entire application process? What part gets you excited? Where do you feel like you can make the best impact with families that work with you?
So my my passion and where I feel like I can make the most impact would be helping your scholar to manage this process and build the confidence to build their autonomy and own this. And what I mean by that, because that's kind of vague, what I mean by that specifically is being able to take your scholar from day one, where maybe they know a little bit about the application. They may have their own preconceived notions, and maybe they don't know anything. And that's totally fine too. But what I really feel like I make the most impact with is helping them over time to make them feel confident that they know that they're completing everything and that they know that they're doing what they need to do in order to complete the process in the most effective ways so that they have the best chance to get accepted. And all that comes down to is organization, management, and follow through. What I tell everyone is that I will, I'll always make sure that, you're not gonna drown or anything like that. You might sink a little bit, but I'm gonna help you build the skills so that you can plug those holes and right the ship along the way and get you to where you want to go.
Absolutely. And it's so important that families realize when they work with somebody like us, they need to know what their role is. The scholar, the student is the pilot. Moms and dads, they're the co-pilots. We're the GPS. So, really the student can call all the shots. They can go rogue if they want to. I mean, you might end up in the deep end if you do. You're responsible for landing the plane, but we are simply a guide. We're really just a resource. And I say this all the time. Where parents send their kid to school, that's going to be one of the biggest gifts they ever give them. That bachelor's degree, it's going to last a lifetime. My little girl's walking into the office right now. You might hear her. So anyway, she's out now. But where you send your baby to college will be one of the most expensive gifts that you ever give them. It lasts a lifetime. And for so many high school students, this is a scary decision. Where are you going to go to college? I mean, minors haven't made adult decisions like this before. And it can be daunting because the decision will last a lifetime. So tell me, when you're working with someone, let's say there's a family out there and they're considering working with you. Families have a lot of options. There's a lot of other agencies out there, a lot of different groups. What is it that a family can expect with you? How are you different than anybody else that they could possibly work with?
I think a lot of it from my perspective specifically, when thinking about working with someone, really a lot of my differentiation comes from my executive functioning background. And so I think that, you could work with anyone, right? And, when you think about what your scholar's gone through in school, if they're, maybe your scholar is an exceptionally performing student, which is probably the case, but there's always these things where maybe they wait until the last minute and they do really well, right? That's so stressful for a student. Since I've worked with students that are like that, they're high achievers, but they've just got so much stress at home because of these factors. My experience with that allows me to understand how that happens, even if they might not admit it. I just know that that's happening just by asking a couple of simple questions. And so that allows me to better help your scholar in managing that stress. Like, I think that's one of the most overlooked things about this process is not only do you want to get into the college that you want to get into, but you want to do it with the least stress possible. And so I really think that, that background is going to really help me to impact that in a different and in some cases, maybe a more effective way.
Absolutely. Well, John, thanks, man, so much for taking the time to speak with us and sharing with families a lot about your expertise, a little bit about your experience at Purdue, and giving us some insight into how to be successful. So for everybody else out there watching right now, as I mentioned before, where you send your kid to college, that is going to be one of the biggest gifts you ever give them. And college brings together two things that our parents care about, or our parents care about the most: our money and our kids. And it's so important that when you go throughout this process, you are able to do one job and one job only. Be a parent. Love your kid. keep the peace in the house, and make sure that you're providing them the freedom to create and explore. So the mission for Access College America is to help our scholars prepare, apply, and achieve. When you work with us, we get to do that. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.